I thank you very much, Rabbi Weinberg, but once you create such expectations, it's very hard to... What do we do? Okay. So firstly, it's an honor to be here in Kansas City. I want to thank Sam, Karen, Ida. You guys are right there? Okay. For having me. And yes, it's the strange trajectory of life. Myself meeting David Pack, grandson of Maria, who we are honoring this evening, and being here in Kansas City. I have to say, just as an opening, just emotional reaction, one of the things that always touches me when you travel around the world and you see another Jewish community, the miracle of it all. Each of us is a walking miracle. Here we're honoring Maria. I hear her story about 9 months, was it? Living under a barn? 27 months, okay. Living under a barn in Poland. What is the pronunciation of the city? Wojcislaw. And then the divine providence of ending up here and building both a successful empire, but also becoming a pillar of Jewish life in this beautiful community. What are the odds that something like that would happen? So when you see it, and then you go back, we turn the clock back thousands of years, when Abraham, a great patriarch, forefather Abraham and his wife Sarah, were promised by God, almost 4,000 years ago, that you will have a child. And that child will have a child, and they will have children, and one day your grandchildren will spread across the world like the stars in heaven. So even if you're the greatest skeptic, you cannot deny a promise like that was made. And more importantly, the promise was delivered. Here you are. Look at yourselves. Think about your own parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. The odds that we be here in the United States living in such comfort, the ability to not be concerned about anyone arresting us or trying to round us up. Just 50, 70 years ago, here's a living witness, the woman we're honoring this evening, the miracle that she was. So to me, it embodies something that we often don't pay attention enough to. We take for granted our blessings, and we can sometimes become apathetic. Like the guy that said to his friend, what's worse, apathy or ignorance? And he said, I don't know, and I don't care. So apathy is like the kiss of death, because indifference, you can't fight indifference. So I think we're here this evening, and I'm not suggesting any of us are apathetic, but let's put it this way. We're here this evening to honor that, and to wake up in a way and ignite in ourselves that spark. And I think who's a better tribute to that than the fifth yahrzeit of this woman that we remember. I never met her. I only see her through her children and her grandchildren. But that sometimes tells you more about a person than the person themselves. Because, all of us have our personalities and our strengths. But when you see how it's perpetuated and it continues, that's where you really see life come alive. Now, recently, Elie Wiesel passed away. He was good friends with my father. And after my father passed away, Mr. Wiesel, I became friendly with him. Very helpful to us in many ways. And I once asked him, as I did some other Holocaust survivors, the big question that you wonder at times, I said, is it true? The rumors, they say, that when some Jews went to the gas chambers and being led to their deaths, they would be singing songs like the song Ani Mamin, I believe with complete faith in God's promise, or saying the Shema, or some other prayers. Is it true? So he said, well, we were in the barracks that were not so close to those, to the gas chambers. But I can tell you, many times at night I would hear people with tears saying Kaddish or Shema or that song or other songs. So I said, I don't want to be disrespectful, but I want to ask a question. I'm just a kid that grew up in America, and I can't even imagine what it was like. But tell me, isn't that like something really insane? This is the darkest time in Jewish life. God in every possible way was concealed. Basically gave up, abandoned the Jewish people in the worst possible way. Why are they singing his praises and thanking him at a time like that? Doesn't make any sense. And especially considering Jews are pretty intelligent people. We're not talking about... So he responded, and similarly I've heard from others, he responded the following. He said, first of all, that Jews are insane is not no news. We all know that. Secondly, and more importantly, what the Jews were saying with these songs and with these prayers and with these praises was this. You may take our bodies, but you cannot take our souls. You may take our lives, but you can't take our faith. And if it won't be us, it will be our children. And if it won't be our children, it will be our grandchildren. But we are not going down. And when you look today, after you read the obituaries in 1945 and 1950, and I've read them, that by the year 1990 there will be no Jews left on earth, which made total sense from a scientific point of view. The 6 million, a third of the Jewish people were decimated. Many of them were leaders and teachers and educators. Their children and those that survived were completely destroyed. Even if they were alive, they were half dead. Who would expect that it would be able to continue? And here we are. So when you hear the story of Maria, or Malka Chana is the name I know of her by. Malka, queen, a regal queen, and her story captures in microcosm the story of all our lives. I think it's critical to remember that, and which is why I think the title we gave for this talk is Light, because that's what it's all about. People who embody light. And I want to talk about that in a way that we can all apply to our personal lives. What is light? Light is that power that has its even unnatural power, you can say, to control and to dominate even the darkest moments. And as I said, the darkest moment we all witnessed or we all read about, and we see what came out of that. They say there was this Nazi, particularly cruel Nazi, who was about to kill a Jew, and pointing a gun to his head. The Jew asked permission to say a few words. He wanted to say his final prayers. And the Nazi gave him permission, and he sees the Jew mumbling something quietly. And he says, "What are you saying?" He says, "I'm thanking God." "What are you thanking God for, you miserable Jew? I'm about to kill you. Where's your God?" And the Jew responded, "I'm thanking God that he didn't create me like you." Now, we all laugh, but the laughter comes with the pain as well. And that's the story. And on a humorous note, they tell the story about this Lucy comes home from school, and she's studying biology for the first time, the origin of our species. So she asks her mother, so she's all confused. Where do we come from? Where do we originate from? And her mother, with a beaming smile, sits her down and warmly shares with her. We had a grandfather that came from a certain town in Poland, and a grandmother from a town in Czechoslovakia. And then we go further back. We had a great-great-grandfather who was known as a famous scholar, and he compiled a very powerful book on Jewish law. And farther back we go, the better it gets, all the way to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, and all the way back to Adam and Eve, the Garden of Eden. Best pedigree, yichus. Okay, beautiful. Her father comes home, a long day of work, and she decides to ask him the same question, does Lucy. And her father, in his stark contrast to his wife, suddenly his face gets all ashen, and he said, I always dreaded this day, but please sit down, and I'll try to tell it to you, in somewhat couch it in proper terms. We first originate from apes, and before that, from amphibians, and before that, from some bacteria. And the farthest back that we could figure out, something of 13 billion years, is a ball of gas. That's where we originate. Now you can imagine the little girl is really confused. She runs back to her mother and says, "I don't understand. You told me one thing, Dad told me another." So her mother smiles and says, "Well, we both told you the truth. Your father told you about his side of the family. and I told you about my side of the family." So there you go. You have the ultimate resolution to the creationism versus, evolution argument. It depends which side of the family. Okay. So you can imagine we're here to talk about the mother's side of the family. And not, God forbid, to throw any aspersions on the men. I'm a man myself. But I guess it really comes down to how you look at ourselves. Freud discovered the id. And some people say if he dug a little deeper, it would have been the yid. With the yud, with his, the spark, the pintele yid, the spark. He had his mother. I guess she had strong influence on him, a good Jewish mother. And we all have our mothers, and it really comes down to how you look at things. You look with a positive eye, you see positive stuff. You look with a negative eye, you see negative stuff. Anyway, I'm not really going to discuss the science of it. I wanted to just make the point that we have two ways to look at everything, with eyes of light or with eyes of, shall we say, darkness. So with that in mind, let's talk about this light. Now, let's talk about it maybe in a different context, about ourselves. We all know that we're not just bodies sitting in chairs. We are, something is giving us life. Some people call it a soul. Some people call it electricity. Some people call it energy. There's a lot of names for it. Frankly, I don't really care what word we use because words are all semantics. I have to share this with you, and since I'm mentioning David Pack a number of times, it was one of the first classes he came to. I told the story, and afterwards he was really moved by it, so I want to share it. And it was a story that happened with me years and years ago when I started giving a class in the city. We're talking about over 3 decades ago, before many of you were born. That's a compliment. So I remember giving a class, and the people coming to the group were mostly from the arts and entertainment industry. Different people that I know. I'm not going to drop any names now. I'll do that in case there are any hecklers after the talk and you ask questions. And if I need to do that, I'll do. But I remember the people coming to my class were they were Jewish, many of them, some non-Jews as well, very spiritual, but far from anything that you would call traditional. If you ask them where did they get their spirituality, many of them would say from things like Zen Buddhism, or you may have heard of a thing called LSD, which is not an acronym for Let's Start Davening, okay? There's a joke related to that, but I just want to use the time for the reason we're here. So this was interesting. I actually loved the conversation because, sometimes some people like to talk to people that agree with them. I actually like to talk to people that don't agree with me because that makes for something dramatic and lively, and you usually learn things. And we had very interesting conversations about what soul is about, what is a soul, and what is God, or what is not God, and so on. And I remember I decided, many people coming to the class at the time, even before I opened my mouth, I may be projecting an image which is not neutral. Here I am with a beard and a yarmulke. Anybody can project any type of stereotype on me. And for all I know, some people sitting there looking at me, I may remind them of an angry grandfather they had that schlepped them to synagogue on Yom Kippur, and they're resentful. Or some irrelevant Hebrew school teacher that taught them hollow bar mitzvah lessons. Or maybe even good, nice memories. So I decided to do an experiment, a real experiment. Instead of using any language that had any indication of anything religious or Jewish and so on, I created my own language. I didn't use the word God. Instead of God, I used the word like higher reality or the essence of it all. Or if it was a particularly new age group, I would say something like undefined layers of unconscious energy or something, And instead of Torah, I used the word blueprint. Instead of mitzvahs, connections. And instead of Mashiach, Messiah, redemption, I used destination. And here I was waxing eloquent about how we reach the essence of reality, make through these different connections we make by following a blueprint, and ultimately reaching a point of total fusion between spirit and matter, between form and function, between body and soul, between the inner and the outer. You get the idea. And people were like, listening. They were like quite, I must say, they were pretty taken by it, mesmerized, I would even say. And after a few weeks, a guy came over to me. I remember his name was Kenny Vance. If you remember, there was a group in the 60s called Jay and the Americans, and he was one of the singers in that group. He comes over to me and says to me, "Are you talking about God?" So I say, "Yeah, but don't spoil it for don't spoil it for the others." So I realized then the experiment worked beyond my expectations. I realized it's all words we know today. They say, words communicate. In therapy, you always hear, especially marital therapy, communicate. He or she can't figure out what you're thinking. So break the silence. Say what you're thinking. So communication is a way of communicating. But communication also has another side to it, where words are loaded. You may use a word that's completely meaningless to me, but to you it's a very significant word. I may use a word that's very innocuous, but if I say it, it may remind you of a word that your mother would say every time she went ballistic. So words are loaded. And the word God, frankly, is one of those words that, I don't know if we passed out a little note to each of you to translate what does God mean. Besides the prerequisite creator, supreme being, or like that atheist that said, I don't believe in God with such passion as if he existed, or whatever it is that you would define God by, I don't think we'd come up with the same definition. There are people who are ready to die in the name of God and kill others, unfortunately. There are people who are ready to die, or, kill others, but die in the name there is no God. And then there are passionate agnostics and passionate atheists and all the levels in between. But it really comes down to what the words mean. Levi Yitzchak Berditchev was a great Hasidic Rebbe, and he once said, it's one of my favorite stories, I have it in my book. He once said to a self-proclaimed atheist, he said, the God you don't believe in, I also don't believe in. Think about that. So it's really about what are you saying? What do you mean by this word? And I think the same is about the soul. So I just wanted to begin with that introduction because I don't want to say words that, I feel this is a captive audience in a sense, and you're not hostile. But nevertheless, I think it's important to state up front, when I say the word soul, what does that mean? So actually, no one's ever seen a soul. So whether you believe in the soul or you don't believe in the soul, you cannot deny the fact, God forbid, there's a difference between a corpse, and I don't mean to sound morbid, and a person that's alive. I remember 11 years ago when I walked into the room when my father passed away, with 2 minutes before he was alive, and then suddenly life had left. And I touched the same hand that I had touched for so many years, and I was completely overwhelmed, like we all are by moments like that. But I remember thinking to myself, so what happened? What left? And which part of him is the part that I connect to? Now, obviously, we want to have both together, life, soul within the body, obviously. But still, which is the part that you connect to? So, of course, we connect to the personality, we connect to the energy, we connect to the vibes, the laughter, the warmth, everything that we connect to those that we love. So you start thinking about these things and you realize no one's ever seen a soul, but you cannot deny there's something about us that's more than just purely an inanimate object. Now today, this is much easier to talk about than it was 100 years ago, 200 years ago, because modern physics basically is teaching us a similar idea. Energy, subatomic particles. Nobody's ever seen them. No one's ever seen an atom. The atoms that we see in our science books are just a working model. No one even knows if it looks like a cluster of grapes that we imagine, because it's too small to be seen. And who was it? It was a Sir Arthur Eddington, maybe, a physicist in the 30s, when they were starting to discover these weird and bizarre conclusions in quantum mechanics, where especially about the properties of light and things that not being indeterministic, as they say, Newtonian physics, everything is defined. They call the billiard ball effect. You hit a billiard ball exactly the same angle, the same speed, the same direction, it will always have that same effect. You throw up a ball in the air, the same way, it will always fall down the same fashion. But suddenly in the quantum world, which is the invisible world of subatomic particles, things are not quite predictable. There's Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Basically, things are in a state of probability. And this was really weird because Einstein himself said that God doesn't play dice with the universe. And Niels Bohr reportedly responded, don't tell God what to do. Okay, so there was this Sir Arthur Eddington, they asked him a question, how do you come to all these strange conclusions about subatomic particles and quantum stuff when no one's ever seen it? And he gave this fascinating and simple analogy. He said there was this fisherman who spread a net over all the seas, and he was going to catch as many fish as he can, and then document the different types of fish. And he began the process. He put his net down, and he gathered all these different fish, began documenting the size of the fish, the color, the species, and then he came to this great conclusion. The conclusion was there are no fish in the sea that are shorter than a half-inch long. And he was about to make this big announcement that he came to this great revelation. His little daughter comes over and says, let me see the net that you used. And of course, when you look at the net had half-inch spaces between the ropes. So of course, you don't need to be a scientist to know that that you just have to add one line. With a net with half-inch spaces, you will never catch fish that are shorter than a half-inch long. So basically, he said you have to know what instruments you use. If you use empirical instruments like our senses, sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell, you can see what you can see. You can hear what you can hear. You can taste, touch, and smell. But then there's whole areas or dimensions that instrument is simply, those instruments are insufficient. Someone says to you, what does love look like? You can't describe it in that sense. Is it 5 inches wide and 10 inches long? Is it narrow? Is it tall, short, etc.? You can't apply that to something that is more ethereal. Simple as that. So his statement was, we don't have instruments at this point where we can see directly the effects of these quantum forces. What we can do is to extrapolate by seeing their effect on others. Like we talk about the black hole, for example. How could anyone ever see a black hole when all the light is being so powerfully retained by the gravitational pull? The answer is you see it by its impact on other bodies around it. So if you don't see the magnet, let's say, but you suddenly see other metal pieces are moving about, you have to say that there must be some force that's affecting them. So it's a completely scientific statement to say, I don't see it directly, but I see indirect effects. So it's basically the idea that we have to use different tools. Unfortunately, as people, what we do is we use our common, the tools and instruments that we're accustomed to. So when someone says, tell me something about the soul, what we try to do is try to fit it into a net that don't work. It's an instrument that doesn't work. You've all heard of the city called Chelm, right? I don't know how far it is from your mother's hometown, but it's probably near there. Huh? So Chelm was this town, they say it had a lot of smart people, but the neighbors were resentful, so what they did was they created this folklore about these fools of Chelm. You know, these like Polish jokes type of thing. Another stereotype. And so in this town of Chelm, there was a little farm, a farmer. So you can imagine if the farm of Chelm, if Chelm was a small town, the farm must have been much smaller. But this was his baby. It was his farm. He inherited from his parents, grandparents, so he knew every inch of soil. And it was his thing. One day he gets a visitor from some type of major farmer, who thousands of acres. We're the biggest farms in the United States. Are they in Kansas? Missouri? I don't know where they are. But wherever it is. And, okay, so he proudly gives him a royal tour of his Chelm farm, which didn't take long, but he gave him the tour. They sit down afterwards. He says, so what do you think about my farm here? He said, well, it's nice and cute, but it's so tiny. So the Chelm farmer gets all insulted and taken aback. He says, how big is your farm back in the United States? So how's a farmer from the United States going to explain this to a small shtetl guy that never saw anything bigger than his little place, his little farm? So he tries to find a point of reference. He says, my farm, I'll tell you, it takes me all day to travel with my tractor from one end of the farm to the next. So suddenly the Chelm farmer, with compassion and empathy in his eyes, looks at the other farmer and says to him, don't feel bad. I once had a tractor like that too. You know? Okay? So if we ask the question to people, are you objective or subjective or narrow-minded or closed-minded? How many of us would say we're closed-minded, narrow-minded, and subjective? See, because being subjective makes you think you're objective. This Chelm farmer was not malicious. He was just basically, when someone asks you, are you objective? The answer we have to give is not yes or no. The answer is, I'm as objective as my perspective allows me. If I'm standing on the ground and someone asks you, what does the horizon look like? It looks like one thing. You climb 50 feet up on a mountain, it looks like something else. If you climb to the top of the mountain, the horizon is a completely different look. So it's all about perspective. We all have our farms, and our farm gives us a certain narrow perspective on things. And the most important thing, which is I think what Jews always knew, is that there's always a bigger picture. Don't ever think it's only your little farm that defines reality. And that's why we're here, because we never got overconsumed with our own arrogance as the greatest empires did. Because we always knew, as I mentioned before, the Holocaust is a very strong example of it, but there are many examples. We did not think that it all begins and ends with me. And if it won't be me, it will be my children. And if it won't be my children, it will be my grandchildren. That is a perspective that's eternal. And that's why we say Am Yisrael Chai, that the Jewish people are eternal. Because it's connecting to eternal ideas that are absolutely not quantifiable with the empirical instruments that we have. So when you really think about a soul, and we're talking about the soul of Maria, the soul of Malka Chana, we're talking about a soul of each one of us. What is a soul? So as I said, no one's ever seen it. But we do have one beautiful expression in the book of Proverbs that describes a soul, comparing it to a flame. It says, Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam. The flame of God is the soul of a human being. So flame is something we can all observe. The closest approximation, this verse is telling us, to a soul is look at a flame. Study a flame. And you'll start learning about yourself. which of course is not a surprise, therefore, why in Judaism flames and menorah and fire has such significance. We light Shabbos candles every Friday night, holiday candles, Hanukkah coming up, a whole festival of lights. And even, sadly, when we mourn someone that's passed, a Yizkor candle. Why a flame? You ever think, why a flame? Because a flame is the closest approximation of what our soul is like. So just a few lessons of a flame, and what's even more fascinating, that pre-science, modern science, and the appreciation of light, as taught to us by Einstein and then later by the quantum physicists and so on, Judaism always knew the power of light. Maybe not purely in a scientific way, but they understood that light is the best description of what is the core of reality. So when you look at a flame, and we'll soon be doing so, as I said, Hanukkah. As a matter of fact, one of the Hasidic Rebbes has a beautiful expression. He says, listen to what the flames tell us. They tell us a story. It's a very silent story, a quiet story, but it's a beautiful story. The first thing, the most obvious thing with a flame is the only physical thing you can see with your eyes that defies gravity. Helium does as well, and gases, but you need to put it in a balloon or something to see that. A flame is the only thing that defies gravity. The wick, so to speak, grounds it, but the flame is always licking the air. Another thing a flame, of course, does, it warms, it illuminates, and a few other things which I'll mention shortly. But let's talk about this, about defying gravity. So I'll share with you maybe through a story. The story goes with the Tzemach Tzedek was the third Chabad Rebbe. He was a child playing with other children. They were playing on a ladder. They were climbing a ladder, up and down, up and down. Children. All the other children were afraid to climb to the top of the ladder. Tzemach Tzedek, as this little boy, he climbed right to the top. Afterwards, his grandfather, the famous Rabbi Shneir Zalman, the Baal Tanya of the Adi, asked his grandson, he said, what distinguished you from your other friends? Why were they afraid to climb to the top and you were not? And he answered, very simple, Zayda, grandpa. He said, because when they climbed, they kept looking down. So they saw how high they were, and they were afraid to climb higher. When I was climbing, I kept looking up. So I saw how low I was. It motivated me to climb higher. So essentially, what is a flame? A flame teaches us about reaching upward. And if you think about it, every human being, every one of us, one way or another, have two voices inside of us. There's the survival voice, where we have to make ends meet, we need to work, we have to make money, we're busy with all that. And then there's another voice, I'll call it the transcendent voice, the need to somewhat liberate and free ourselves from the monotony and the routines of our lives. And we do that many different ways. Some do it through literature, through music, through romance, through travel. Some do it through love and sexuality, others through religion and faith. But it's really feeding another side of us, the transcendent side. Now, but the real challenge, of course, is how do you balance the two? If you think of the hours you spend during each day, you tell me, what are you spending most of the time? We're definitely spending in the survival mode, surviving. Simply the hours at work, sleep, shopping, commuting. So basically, most of our lives are occupied with the means. And the transcendent really is relegated. What most of us do is we compartmentalize. Weekends, evenings, vacation. We find moments for that. But if someone asked you an honest question, you asked yourself or your child asked you, what's more important, which one? I don't think it's very obvious. So why are you spending most of your time doing the thing that's less important? You say, well, I have no choice. We got to pay the bills. We got to eat. We got to sleep. We need shelter. We need clothing. But think about what is it doing to our internal psyche, this so-called dance or balance or tension, you can even say. So many of us get used to it. You get used to anything. Well, talking from Jewish texts say we don't just get used to it. It's about really understanding that there's an approach to this. Now, you have different schools of thought. For example, if you go to Eastern mysticism, like the Eastern disciplines, most of them really focus mostly on an ascetic approach, which means let's try to strip away and escape and get away from the material and climb the mountain in some way and realize that materialism is not that significant. Now, most people in the Western world just can't bring themselves to do that. Some find it very attractive and actually chose that. That's one path. In the Western world, it's more of a compartmentalized approach. Whether it's, and I'm not talking necessarily from a Jewish point of view, whether it's the Calvinistic work ethic, finding within work, virtue, charity, and so on. The Jewish approach, interestingly, is very unique. It says that the same God that created the soul also created the body. And therefore, materialism is not meant to be avoided. It's meant to be engaged. But the goal is to spiritualize the material. And that's ultimately how we relieve the tension between the two. So it's not an escape into one or the other. It's finding the way to realize that the soul is the most important thing, light. But to have light, you need fuel. And the material life that we live, the work we do, and all those things, if you see it as means and fuel for soulful living, then you'll solve the problem and will not have a duality or a plurality in one's life. And that's why the focus is so much on light, what light is all about. The first step, as I said, defying gravity, the idea of feeding that transcendent part of ourselves, to looking up, to know how to look up and not down. Now remember, it's not easy because we live in a world that is constantly tugging at us. We're not in a neutral world. We're living in a world that is constantly demanding our attention. I read a statistic that by the time we're age 20, most of us in the Western world have seen 1 million advertisements. You know what that means? Now, we may think we're all immune to it, but we're not immune. I was younger, I used to think that advertising doesn't affect everyone except me. But then I suddenly realized I'm drinking Diet Coke, Why? Why? Is it because I discovered that's a divine drink or something, And so on. So because advertising is, and I'm not here to knock advertising, I'm just pointing out that it has its way of infiltrating, so to speak, at youngest of age, and wherever you go, someone's demanding your attention. And therefore, we're not in a neutral situation. I was driving one day with a friend. I hadn't seen him for a while. And I thought we could have a good conversation, catch up, but he's busy texting. And I couldn't get his attention. So you know what I did? I texted him. Right, I'm sitting right near him. And he says to me, he was like somewhat disoriented. So he says to me, "Are you texting me?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Why are you texting me?" I said, "Because I'm trying to sit here and can't get your damn attention for the last half hour, You get the idea. So technology was supposed to emancipate us and this, but at the same time, let's be honest, it also enslaves us. So it has, like anything, and I'm not here to knock technology or advertising, it's like anything, it's a double-edged sword. And it's what they used to say with computers, junk in, junk out. It depends how you use it. If you use it for good things, it's tremendous power. If you use it for bad things, it's also tremendous destruction. And the key is whether you are in control, like any addiction, or it's in control. Who's in control here? So if you think about it, whatever your experiences in life are, the places you do gain control is when you're able to see yourself as light, not as a wick. Which means that the wick is only a fuel, or a stepping stone, if you wish, for us to grow in light, to transcend, to reach higher places. And there's no question, whoever we are, obviously when we're younger perhaps we're more idealistic and we maintain this, but even as we grow, whatever age we may be, there's that sparkle in the eye when you see people, and I see people sometimes, I meet 80, 85 years old, and I see that sparkle. They're not preparing to die. They're not just wasting their life away. They have that energy, that soulful energy. That's the people that are connected to that light. Because that never dies. That never dies. Now, what else about light that is so powerful? I mentioned before, it warms us and it illuminates. There are people you meet, and I don't want to bring up anything negative, but sometimes you meet people and you say, this person just drains me every time I see them. You know anyone like that? And there are people, not that necessarily you want to avoid them, and there may be people you even like, but they just have that type of negative energy. And there are people you meet and you just love to be around them because they just give off an aura that's empowering. Let's say you're inspired with something, and then, I'm sure you have people to call, and you get on the phone with them, and they say, "Hey, I'm inspired to do something," and they're the first to throw cold water, and they say, "Don't get so excited, I've been there already," And then there are people who believe in you, and they say, "Go for it." This is a simple example. You're meeting people. Some people have succumbed to a darker negative attitude, and others that have a light attitude, that give off light. I mean, it's a tough question to ask yourself, but what kind of person are you? Someone comes over to you, do they feel empowered or drained? I mean, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but think about it. And I'm sure you're not going to find an answer because no one's going to tell you, "Hey, by the way, you drain me every time I speak to you." But it's important to look at ourselves. And sometimes you just see it, And I'm not, I meet many people and I know the reasons. People sometimes grown up in very difficult lives have been hurt and have a lot of bitterness in them. So you can justify it. But there are a lot of people who've been hurt and have any reason to be bitter, but they still smile and they still give off a positive energy. I mean, your mother, with the way I hear it, look, you said 27 months, had every reason to be the most negative, dark person in life. That doesn't sound to me, that's what she exuded, especially the way Rabbi Weinberg put it earlier. So this is not something that we are doomed, because we do have this choice, and you see it all the time. It's always easy to say, if I had all the blessings you had, then I'd be in a better mood. Yeah, you find out. No one should ever judge what another person went through. There are people who are beautiful people who went through the harshest things. There are people who have easy lives and are the most bitter and angry and resentful people. So it has nothing to do with life experiences, it's what you do with it. And this again is a quintessential Jewish message of what it means to be embodied light. Yes, we are walking menorahs. That's what we have to be. That wherever we go, we illuminate, we warm others. In Hasidic lingo, there's an expression that when it's cold in the room, there's two options. You could put on a fur coat, it's called a tzaddik in pelts. A righteous person, pelts is a word for like a heavy fur coat, so you're going to be very warm, beautiful. But no one else is warmed by it. Or you can do the second thing, is you light a nice little fire, a nice little fireplace, where everybody in the room is warm, and so are you. So nothing compromised. This is what we're meant to be. That wherever we go, and I see clearly from the turnout here and the stories I hear, how Malka Chana, I hope you don't mind me calling her by that name, even though I know Maria is the name that everyone knows her by, is a living example. And it doesn't matter, 5 years have passed, I'm sure there's a sadness involved with someone who's passed on. But there's no sadness involved when you see that light continuing to perpetuate. And again, it's a model for each one of us. We are all this walking light that we should be. And the material life that we have, as some people write, it's not that we're physical beings going through a spiritual journey. We're spiritual beings going through a physical journey. It's a very different way of looking at your life. Now, I'm here to just share my thoughts, my own experiences in life, and something I think we all commonly share, the struggles, the tensions that I mentioned before between matter and spirit, whatever terms you want to use it, what you want to use and explain that. But the bottom line is, it really comes down to what we are going to live and contribute, and what our lives are going to contribute to this, to the destiny that we control. My father was a journalist, and he often liked to say that in journalism, they say there are three types of people. People who make things happen, people who watch things happen, and people who ask what happened. One thing we can stand very proud and say, around 4,000 years ago, an Abraham and a Sarah pioneered a new approach. In the pagan world, they introduced ideas like virtue and charity and kindness, basically the antithesis to narcissism and selfishness. Now, today, this may not be such a big revolution because everybody is so altruistic, which is not necessarily the case, but at least it's a standard that has become quite popular. But there was a world that was not that way. I remember a few years ago when Haiti had its earthquake. A little town, a little country, impoverished country, and I was taken by the fact that all the nations of the world were all competing to bring humanitarian effort there. Now, if you're a student of history, you tell me what happened in earthquakes 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. Whenever there was an earthquake in a country or a volcano, what do you think all the neighbors did? They pillaged, raped, and completely stripped the country of its power. So something's changed in this world. There's plenty more work to be done. I'm not suggesting we're out of the woods. But something changed. And you know who gets credit for that change? The Jewish people. And I'm standing proudly to say it with full rank completely. Check out a book like Gifts of the Jews by Thomas Cahill, or a book On Two Wings. This is written not by Jews. And they talk about, especially On Two Wings, by Michael Novak. He writes how the foundation of this country, the themes, that all men are created equal, and that we all have inalienable rights, the right of freedom of expression, and so on, are taken, this is his words, from Torah metaphysics. Torah metaphysics, not even Bible. Now, these were not Jews, these were Christians, maybe not practicing Christians, deists, whatever. Because anyone that studies history knows that the civilization as we know it today and these virtues began with the Jewish people. Now, I'm not saying this in any way to belittle anyone that's not Jewish. That's not at all what I'm saying. On the contrary. Because this message is a universal message for all of us. But there are those that pioneered it. The major religions of this world will all trace their roots back to Abraham, including Islam and Christianity. So there's nothing wrong to sit here when we're honoring a matriarch to be able to say that this is something we all have to be proud of and celebrate. Because we were always walking menorahs. We were always bearers of light. Just close your eyes, imagine yourself as a walking flame. Wherever you go, you warm, you illuminate, you bring kindness, virtue. Do we have our challenges and temptations? Obviously we do. That's part of the plan. God didn't say He's not going to make it easy for us. You don't have to use the word the way God. You can say the higher essence or higher reality if you wish. But no one said it's going to be easy. But it's beautiful because it's a challenge that we all have, and it's a challenge we have from the moment we awake to the moment we go to sleep. Who will dominate? The light inside of you or the wick? The flame or the darkness? The matter or spirit? Now, it's much easier. It's easy, of course, to gravitate back to our material needs because it's easy. Let's be honest, instant gratification, who doesn't love it? But when you step back for a moment and you reflect, especially in times like this when we reflect on the soul, you say to yourself, but that's easy, but it's not necessarily the most meaningful or the most truthful approach. There was this teacher who was teaching a class in time management. And he, to demonstrate it, he brought into his classroom an empty aquarium, and he had a few sacks that were filled with different stuff. And he said to the class, I'm going to demonstrate something here. Opens up sack number 1, and there's some big boulders in it, and he puts the boulders into the aquarium. Okay. And he asked the class, is this aquarium full? Well, some said yes, some said no. Then opens up sack number 2, it has small pebbles. And he pours that into the aquarium, so of course they fill in all the cracks. And is it full now? Well, some people saw 2 more sacks, so they knew it's not full. Third sack was fine gravel. So the fine gravel, of course, filled up all the nooks and crannies that were not filled by the stones, by the boulders and by the small stones. Okay, and finally, the final sack was a few pitchers of water. And he pours the water in. Now, of course, water is even more fine. So now the water is spilling over the aquarium. You have the water, the fine gravel, the little stones, the boulders. So what's the lesson that we learn from this? Time management. So, of course, the smart Alex in the room say the lesson we learn, that no matter how full your day is, you can always fill it up more. You know. He said, no, that's not the lesson. The lesson is that if you don't get the boulders in there first, you're never going to get them in. If you fill your life with the water and the gravel and the little stones, and you don't fill it up with the foundational elements, which are the boulders, you'll never get them in because there's no room for them. And this is, of course, the line, who is it, John Lennon? I don't know. Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. I believe that the truism in Judaism is that we join together and we share an evening like this. It's critical that it not be just talk, that we go away with it with some personal inspiration. There's something we can take back to our lives that we can retain. Because as they say, to get inspired is relatively not that difficult. But to maintain it, maintenance contracts are far more expensive. To maintain it is a challenge. So how do we go away from an evening like this? And let's say we all can agree on this message of light and soul and so on, and all the beauty of it. But how do we take it in a way that we can take it back in our own lives? And even when tomorrow morning or whenever it is, we start facing our regular challenges and everything's back to where the routine takes over, and share it with our families in some way. So that's why in Jewish thought you have practical suggestions that people can actually do something. And that becomes incorporated into your routine, so then you can carry something that has inspired or touched you in a way that can perpetuate. So I want to make, if I may, with your permission, a suggestion or two. And maybe something that you're familiar with, maybe not. In business they say that the business 101 is you can't have a business without a mission statement, right? First statement. Someone comes to you for investment, and they say, you ask them, what's your mission? And they tell you, well, it'll take a few weeks for me to share it with you, or I have several options, or I haven't really developed one. What are you going to do? How much are you going to invest in this type of business? Okay. Now, when you ask people on a personal level, what's your personal mission statement? That's exactly what they tell you. If you have a few weeks, I'll share it with you, or I have a bunch of options, or I decided I'll develop it after I retire. You know. And most people will say, my mission is to be a happy person, to be successful, to make money, to build a beautiful family, healthy family. Those are all nice things, but they're not qualified as a mission, because it would be like a company saying, the mission of our company is to make money, or the mission of our company is to have happy employees. Those are all important things, but that's not the mission. The mission has to be unique to you. Now, did anyone even ask you in your lifetime that you should have did anyone ever encourage you to have a personal mission in one's life? So how could you even expect, therefore, to even think in those terms if it was never even brought up? So this is a critical component when you talk about someone having a soulful life. I have no question when you shared before, Rabbi Weinberg, the conversations you had with Maria and how she went easily from Poland back to her work was very clear. There was no compartmentalization. One fed the other, and both ways. That's a person who's a mission-oriented person. Unfortunately, sometimes it takes a lot of pain to have such crystallized vision, but all of us are capable of doing it. So I want to share a story and then make my suggestion, or two suggestions, or three, if you allow me. No, it'll be two. Okay. So the story is one of the most life-defining moments in my life. After my book was published, Toward a Meaningful Life, so I was traveled across the country, also here in Kansas City, and I was also in St. Louis, which isn't far from here, among many other cities. And I spoke there. I remember it was a Monday night at a JCC, and a woman in the audience afterwards sent me a letter. Now this letter is so much etched in my being that I remember it word for word. So I'll read it to you from my memory. And the story is this. She writes to me the following, that I was in the audience when you spoke. I was going to come over to you, but there was a line, and then I felt uncomfortable. Regardless, I decided better to put it into words. And this is what she writes. I'm a 47-year-old executive in St. Louis, successful by all accounts. People are envious of me because of my success. Wealthy, well-connected, influential, and so on. But beneath the veneer of this success lies a woman in shreds. You see, because my soul was murdered when I was a young child due to the abuse that I endured in my home. Physical, sexual, psychological, emotional abuse. And my life is basically over since then. I loathe myself. Every day is a struggle against suicidal thoughts. And I've tried different types of therapy. Nothing really works. Intimacy, relationships are a mess. I don't trust, and no one trusts me. I'm always testing. And I've long given up hope. What I do is what most people, and myself probably do, is when you're lacking inner control of your life, you create outer control. So I became super ambitious and super successful, and everyone thinks I'm great, but it's just a mask hiding the terrible pain that I suffer all the time. So every day I breathe in, breathe out, wake up, go to work, and just take it from day to day. Someone gave me a copy of your book. I'm Jewish, but unaffiliated. I never went to any synagogue. I was reading through your book, and I was just leafing through it, and a line jumped out at me in the chapter Birth. There's a chapter on birth, and the line was, birth is God saying, you matter. And she writes again in this letter, birth is God saying, you matter. And again, birth is God saying, you matter. And I'm going to read this line, she writes, the rest of my life. For some reason, after 47 years, like a thunderbolt that struck me between the eyes, I suddenly realized something I never knew. That despite what my parents told me about how I'm worthless and how they treated me, and despite what society tells us, that we are nothing more valuable than the statistic on someone's balance sheet, and that our value is based on our looks, our performance, our youth, our buying power, our social status. Despite all that, I matter to the one that matters most, God. And the mere fact that I'm here on earth, even if I accomplish nothing on a certain day, is a vote of confidence that I am needed, that I'm indispensable, that I am loved. And then she concludes, which you can say eloquent if it weren't under the circumstances. She writes, so though I have many years to heal, but for the first time in my life I have hope. And the work cut out for me is this. I have to create bypass surgery to reconnect to that moment of birth when God said, you're my child, I love you, you matter, you're indispensable. And then she finally says, so thank you for giving me back my life. This is the letter. As I said, as I say it today, it's exactly the feelings I had when I read it back almost 18 years ago. I couldn't stop sobbing. I remember when I received the letter, I was crying. First of all, someone sharing such a sacred trust with someone they don't even know. And then I went back to the book and I went back to read the chapter myself. I wanted to see how she reads it. A book, you write it, but then it belongs to the reader more than to you, the writer. And I read it through her eyes, and I somewhat appreciated it in a different light. It's obviously not my line. I took it from something I heard many times from my teacher and Rabbi, but really a quote that he took from the book of Isaiah. Paraphrased a bit, but that theme. Birth is God saying you matter. And I wrote her back a letter responding, sharing my feelings and offering my friendship and help in any way. I asked her permission to tell the story, which she gave me permission, and asked me time and again not to ever share her name, because she didn't want, she said, I'm sure that others have similar stories, they want to call me, or they want to show their sympathy, so remains anonymous, but we still stay in touch. But I've never forgot the story, and it still haunts me till this day, to be honest. Because I began asking myself, and I started asking audiences, I said, tell me, do you think you matter? And of course, the knee-jerk reaction is a stupid question. Of course I matter. I have a healthy ego. I have all kinds of plaques on my wall. Look at my family. People love me. I did this. I did that. We have all kinds of accomplishments. But let's rephrase the question. If you were never born, would it make a difference to anybody? Would it have made a difference to anyone? Because remember, once you're here, we all justify our existence. But before you're here, no one's missing you, so there's no tragedy if you don't make it, you don't appear. So the question is not whether circumstantially we matter. The question is really whether we fundamentally matter on a cosmic level. There's 7 billion people on this earth. What difference would it make if you didn't exist? And I don't mean to your close friends and family, obviously. So that's a far more complicated question, and I can tell you many people tell me, I'm not sure if I really matter on that level. Or some even say, I don't. Well, the first statement in the Torah, the first statement in the Bible, is that the human being was created in the divine image, which is another way of saying that we are a soul, a flame, a divine flame, as I mentioned from the book of Proverbs. We're a divine flame. It's not by our virtue that we matter. It's because we were placed here by the absolute reality called the divine. So I realized something. I'm the oldest of 5 children. So, you're the oldest, you're somewhat spoiled. You can ask my younger siblings. You know how it is when you're the oldest. The siblings go to therapy because of you, not the other way around. Any of you are the oldest thing? Okay. And then you got to go to therapy because they are going to therapy. We won't go into the whole complications, but the point is, okay, so of course my parents told me they love me, I matter and so on. But is it because my parents told me they love me, that's why I matter? And what happens, God forbid, one day my parents wake up and they say, you know what, we don't love you so much today, so your stocks go down? This woman, like the eclipse of the sun, teaches you to appreciate sunlight more than the light itself does. Because she did not have this luxury of having parents and family and community that told her that she's loved. She came to discover the truest of all truths. That it's not the people around us that make us special. They can affirm it. They can validate it. They can help nurture us. That's what good parents should do. But it's not our parents who gave us value because therefore they can't take it away from us. That's what she came to realize. And I wrote her back. I remember when I had this so-called epiphany. And I thanked her. Even though obviously no one's envious of her life. But she taught me something, and that's something that I've shared, I don't know to how many people. Because that's the real truth. That we are fundamentally valuable, even though it doesn't matter whether there's 7 billion people on this planet. It's not numbers. It's about the quality of your life, and it's the quality that you were placed here, that you have something you and only you can accomplish in this world. And if you don't do it, no one can do it but you. That's ultimately what really the definition, in my opinion, of a soul is, and light. Only you can accomplish it. And it's incumbent upon us to find out what that is and do it. It doesn't mean one action necessarily, because each of us is like a unique musical note, and the entire composition will not be complete until you play your music, until you sing your song. Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote The Voiceless. He says, the saddest thing, those that die with their song still inside them. Imagine that. We have a song inside of us. Michelangelo was asked once, how does he sculpt those beautiful angels out of the marble? And he said, I see the angel trapped in the marble, and I carved and set her free. It's a very different way of looking at things. It means no one can give you the truth. No one can give you your truth, your song, your music, beauty, your music. It's right there, right now inside of you. So the matter, it may be trapped in marble or in concrete or in other substances. We won't mention them all here. And it's our job is to carve. So no one gives you the truth. You know that classic Woody Allen joke where, classic, biting, cynical joke, where the guy comes to the rabbi and says, Rabbi, I hear the Torah has the secrets to all of life. Absolutely. Will you teach it to me? Of course. How much will it cost? How could I teach? How could I charge you? God didn't charge us. Moses didn't charge us. So he's doubly impressed. He's going to get the truth, and it's also free. They sit down, and it's all in Hebrew. And he says, I can't read Hebrew. He says, Hebrew lessons will be $10,000. Okay. Well, that's not the rabbi I'm trying to obviously encourage you to see. This is Woody Allen style, But the point is the opposite. The truth is in you. You don't need anyone to sell it to you. And if anyone's trying to sell it, it means they're missing the point. It's all inside of you. It's just a question whether you're aware of it and whether you have people around you helping you become aware of it. And obviously advertisers are not going to tell this to you because they can't make money on it. So when are you going to see the next time a big billboard that says birth is God saying you matter and there's nothing to sell? I don't think you're going to see that quickly. So with that said, let me suggest this one or two thoughts on how you can connect to that soulful light inside of you. And it's nothing really new, but it's something that you may be familiar with. I mentioned before mission statement. So the best way any company maintains the integrity of their mission statement is they remind themselves of it. They make sure it's on the wall, or the employees, everybody is constantly aware what the purpose of our entity here. Google's mission statement is organizing all the information of the world and making it accessible. 70,000 of their employees, every one of them, every project is driven by that. That's the challenge. So in our personal lives, we have something that goes long before all these corporations, and it's called in the morning, when you wake up in the morning, what do you do as soon as you wake up? So some press the snooze button, other people jump out of bed, or whatever it is. So we have a tradition called Modani. Right when you wake up in the morning, a one-line prayer that doesn't take more than 10 seconds to say, which is basically, and I'll just translate it, thank you for returning my soul to me. To paraphrase a bit, thank you for making me matter, for giving me a mission that's unique and indispensable. Try this out every morning, in your own words. I don't know anyone that has a business meeting as soon as they wake up. So you probably can fit it in before you start the day. And that's why we do it right in the morning, because once we get caught up in the rush hour and in the rat race, it's not easy to just stop and pause. But try it out. The short thing is basically telling your soul, which is like your child, your inner child, you matter. I want to give you a few moments before I get caught up in the day. And you'll be surprised that when you start doing this day by day, I'm not talking about one day, like anything, it needs to become part of your habit. It'll give you back a lot more than you invest in it, because it'll start paying attention and nurturing. It's like a flower. Flowers emerge when you water them. The soul emerges when you water it. So when you acknowledge it and you begin to recognize it, you think about it in your own terms, whatever's comfortable for you, you'll be surprised what kind of impact it can have in your life. Because then later in the day, you may be reminded of moments like that. You'll start seeing you hunger for more. So that's one suggestion. The second one is at the end of the night. The end of the day, or before you go to sleep. So instead of falling asleep with a newspaper on your nose, or with television on, or something like that, or with your mobile, whatever it is you're doing, want to say, end with closing with your day with a soulful reading of something that's not from the regular material stuff you did that day. something a little more spiritual. And there is a prayer as well. We say, B'yotcha afkid ruchi, which is, we also say, I return my soul to you for your entrusting it to you. But again, find your own words, because they'll only work if it's relevant and relates to you. It's not about lip service here. It's about really making it personal. Now imagine if you punctuated your day from the morning and then in the evening, your sleep will be a more restful one, because you're not going in with all the anxieties of the day. You're dedicating these two precious moments in the morning, first when you wake and right before you go to sleep, to something a little more soulful, more light. It will impact your life. And you tell me if it doesn't, okay? Because I've seen it work. It just takes a little effort, because, our routine, many of us, to start something new, it's like trying to teach someone to brush their teeth if they haven't done so for 30 years. Every morning, it's not easy to do because it's not part of your routine. But this is something that's not difficult to do, but the return will be tremendous. And I think in honor of Malka Chana, Maria, that we're all gathered, it's not a difficult thing, it's not a big thing to ask. And this is one way to perpetuate what we're talking about. To ultimately realize, yes, like Hanukkah coming, we are light. We carry light, we are light bearers. We're agents, ambassadors of light in this world. This afternoon, I was by Rabbi Weinberg, his wife shared with me, Luma, that the last mitzvah that your mother did was in the hospital, right? What was it, what was it called? Menorah Medical Center. Was lighting Friday night flame, and then gathering the family and giving them a blessing. So it's interesting. A soul lighting a flame, in a way saying goodbye to this world, but only goodbye from our perspective, because remember, souls see us even though we don't see them. Remember the analogy I gave before with the net. Just because you don't see things doesn't mean they're not happening. In this room, there's buzzing subatomic particles all over the place, even though we don't know it. So why is it so difficult to relate to that? If we're speaking about a certain soul, that soul is right here looking at us and beaming with pride, even though we may not see. We have our farm, the Chelam little farm. We can only see that much. And anyone that's wise knows that. I'm always asked the question, where does the soul go to after it passes? So you always grope for different answers. Then one day, I don't know, I had a thought, what kind of question is that? The question itself is based on a false premise. You ask, where does the soul go to upon death? So I'll use somewhat of a humorous analogy. Imagine a refrigerator having a dialogue with electricity. And the refrigerator asks the electricity, where do you go to when they pull the plug? So what do you think the electricity responds? What kind of chutzpah, what kind of nerve is that? What do you mean where I go to? You're a little box they just invented the last 100 or 200 years ago. I've always been around. I go back to where I always was, which is not confined in the time and space of your little box. The premise of the question is, where do you go, is as if we're the center of existence. So where does the soul go to? Maybe that's not the case. Maybe we're not the center. Maybe we're just one little refrigerator for a little while, and now we think, hey, nothing else is real except me. Think about that. So the fact is, we are really souls, and we see a little bit of reality. What do we really know? But we come to honor a soul, and we come to honor light, especially in this month of lights. So I want to conclude with a blessing to all of us that we should have that, focus, and to be able to sometimes stop and pause. This 90-mile marathon that we're running all day, where it's hard to really see the forest from the trees and smell the roses and all the other cliches that they use, and to really pause and take this moment to really reflect on who are you? We are Jews blessed with the power of light, to be ambassadors of light, to bring the light out of everyone around us, everyone, literally. And we've been doing this so for thousands of years in one long journey. Now it's our leg of the journey to carry the baton. And we have to ask ourselves, are we carrying the baton? Remember, our grandparents carried the baton through much more difficult times. It would be a disgrace if we don't continue to carry it with the blessings that we have in our lives. So God bless us all. God bless you all. And thank you again for honoring me, sharing a few words here. And maybe take this evening and really turn it into something maybe that can have a perpetual ripple effect. Because at the end of the day, this world is made up of a bunch of individuals like us. So each of us can be a little light. Why can't we affect others? And the most interesting thing about light is you don't get diminished when you ignite someone else. Everything in this material world gets diminished, except light. Actually gets stronger. So God bless us all. And again, may the neshama of Malka Chaya continue to bless this community, bless our family, and bless all of us wherever we may be, being a living role model and lesson of what it means to be a Jew in a material world. Thank you very much.